Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome. I call to order the Wednesday, February 7, 2023 SFO Airport Community Roundtable at 7:04 p.m. We are meeting in hybrid session, both in person at the David J. Chakuti Community Room in Melbourne and remotely via Zoom. Joining us today are staff to the Roundtable, Kathleen Winforth, Roundtable Coordinator, Ted Gonzalez, Administrative Secretary to the Planning Department, Mercedes Segura, Administrative Secretary, Planning Department, Timothy Middleton, Aviation Technical Consultant from HMMH, and Jean Rindale, Aviation Technical Consultant from HMMH, will be joining us later this evening via Zoom. And we also have a new person with us, so let's give a great welcome tonight to Diane Estepona, our new Roundtable Administrative Secretary. Welcome, Diane. We've been waiting for you for a few months, so welcome aboard. All right, we're glad you're here, Diane. Looking forward to working with you. Thank you so much. All right, Ms. Wentworth, would you please tell us who the other participant that should be recognized?
Let's see. From the FAA, I see Carlette Young, a Supervisory Senior Advisor. I see Moifer Chin, Community Engagement Officer. Anyone else from your team, Carlette?
No, that is it from our team. Thank you.
We're not hearing you, so was that a no?
We have nothing. No one else is joining us, just the two of us.
Do we have audio from?
We're speaking. Can you hear us?
Give us just 1 second.
That's it.
Yeah, we're not hearing you. Give us a short count.
Hi, sorry. I don't think our staff in the room are able to hear us on Zoom. So just give them a minute or two while they try to resolve that in the room. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Angela.
Also from San Francisco, we have noise officer management and sure who else is here.
Good evening. Tonight we have with us Doug Yeagle, who is the Public Information Officer for the airport. We have Mr. Brian Police, who's the Noise Association Program Manager, Mr. David Owen, with the Airport Noise Office, and Mr. Andrew, the Noise Office.
Thank you. And we also have the role he has set the microphone. And remotely we have Angela Marcus, who just couldn't stay away. And everything else is been.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. And just a reminder that tonight we continue to use the annual feature. That means we will periodically choose share name elections. The list of the names will display. The list of names will display by person and time into the meeting. We will now move on to roll call. Ms. Wentworth, please proceed with the roll call.
City and County of San Francisco Board of Supervisors. No response. City and County of San Francisco Mayor's Office. No response. City and County of San Francisco Airport Commissioner.
Of our Saturday.
San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. CCAG Airport Land Use Commission. Town of 10. City of Belmont.
City of Brisbane.
City of Burlingame.
Ricardo is here.
Town of Tacoma. City of Daly City. City of Palo Alto. City of Foster City. City of Hudson Bay. Town of Hillsborough. City of Menlo. City of Silbury. City of Pacifica. Councilman Tolliver.
I'm planning present.
Thank you. Could everybody, can we all look at our mics and see if is that the problem? Technician people? Do we need to turn off our mics at all?
Most of them are not able to be muted, so just, we're working to discuss them.
Okay.
Thank you. City of Redwood City, Kaya Eakin responded. City of San Carlos. City of San Carlos. City of San Mateo.
Here.
City of South San Francisco.
Mark Ross here.
And Woodside.
Oh.
And we have one.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you, everyone, for being here. Before we get to the business of the day, if you would allow me, I would like to acknowledge that we are in the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramitash Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramitash Ohlone have never exceeded laws nor forgotten their responsibilities as caretakers of this place, as well as for all people who reside in the traditional territory. As then, I recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. I wish to pay my respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramitash community, past, present, and future, and by affirming the sovereign rights as first people. Thank you very much for indulging me in this. And for taking public comment, I would like to acknowledge and welcome newly assigned regular roundtable member from the city of Colma, land of Rosario, from the city of Middleton, from the city of Middleton, from the city of South San Francisco, Mark Gonzalez, and from Palo Alto, Mark. Welcome, everybody, and looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you so much. Now, on to public comments for item not on the agenda. This is a time where members of the public who would like to speak on items that are not on the agenda, turn it over to Ms. Gonzalez so she could tell us how members of the public could speak.
Thank you, Chair. Chair Kennedy, for those attending the meeting and the Zoom video conference, we will use the raise hand feature in order to organize any public comments. During the general public comment period, I will ask those members of the public who wish to comment to click the raise hand feature to speak on the agenda item. For those joining us, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. When you hear your name called, I will prompt you to unmute your microphone and inform you that you may begin speaking. You will have 2 minutes. Thank you. And now we have Remy Tan, Chair.
Thank you. Let's see if that audio issue with Zoom has been fixed. It's not yet. Okay, so what we're going to do then is we're going to...
Hello? Can you hear me?
At a later time when the audio is fixed. And we'll take care of you, Ms. Okay? So don't worry, get back to you when have that technical problem. All right, so I'm going to close public comment for now, unless there's somebody here in the room that would like to address the board. See you now. I'm going to go ahead and close public comment again, that we will go back to it once the audio is taken care of. Wonderful.
And next is I would like to see if anyone would like to pull anything from the calendar. I did not see any people and now, and I will be taking a motion to share the agenda and approve of the consent. Motion by member of second by member Video. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Abstain. Motion carries 13-0. Thank you. Item 3.
Chair for calendar year 2024.
We are
These are the 12-month term of the office for calendar year 2020. I open the floor to Chairman. Now, but for the chair, any questions? Are there any other? Chair, and I can't talk, but I don't stand back here. I think let's all those in favor of chair, Vice Chair, to be the chair of the board. Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Abstain. I will have that video showing the shadows of the nation. Now, years. A lot of others and a lot of great.
Thank you, Chair Royce, and congratulations. Thank you for your kind words, but honestly, it has been an honor and a privilege to serve the last 2 years with all of you here. I couldn't ask for a better team to work with. Staff, Kathleen Wentworth is phenomenal, really has done a phenomenal job and tremendous contribution to the roundtable. Linda Wallen, your guidance and your leadership behind the scene always, thank you so much for that. Al, being the vice chair, you know, we worked together as a team. This was, last 2 years were definitely a team effort. And working with our partners, the SFO, IBAR, and his team, as well as the FAA. This is a body that really works with collaboration. Nothing could be accomplished without collaboration, so I'm glad that we are on that path. Angela Montes, she's here. She also did a phenomenal job over the past 2 years that I have been here. Thank you, Angela, for all your help. Thank you, everybody, really. It's members of the roundtable who have been phenomenal, sharing their views and their input and everybody bringing something to the table. Anyway, it's been an honor and privilege, and I'm looking forward to work under your leadership by Chair Royce.
Well, Sam, thank you for those kind comments. And by the way, we're very fortunate that you're going to still be on the roundtable. So we'll still be calling on you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is the Zoom now working? Is the Zoom now working, or is it still off? Still off? Okay. We'll continue to proceed then. The next item on the agenda is item number 4, and that's selection of the Vice-Chairperson for calendar year 2024. I'm very pleased to place in the nomination the name of Terry O'Connell. Terry is a council member from Brisbane. He's been a longtime member of this roundtable and has been involved in a number of our subcommittees, including chairing our portable noise monitors committee as well. So with that, I nominate Terry O'Connell. Do we have other nominations? Seeing none, I will close the nominations. And if I could, I'd move to public comment, because is there anybody in chambers that wish to comment? Hearing none, we'll move on then and close public comment for now. We may come back to it if someone wants to speak later. With that, we'll take a vote. All in favor of Terry O'Connell for Vice-Chairperson of the SFO Roundtable for 2024, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Let the record show it's carried 13-0. Terry, congratulations.
Thank you, everyone, and I hope I can live up to the people who have come before me and served the community well in this organization well. Thank you.
Okay, now we did the fun stuff for the night. Next on the agenda are like 3 administrative things, and I don't mean to diminish them because they're important, but the first thing is item number 5, which is the approval of a resolution for the 24 designation of the regular roundtable meeting dates, time, and place. Regular meetings have been scheduled and are scheduled for the first Wednesday of every even-numbered month at 7 o'clock p.m. and will be held in person right where we are tonight, Shakoti Hall in Millbrae. Members of the committee are required to attend in person unless you have a Brown acceptable excuse, meaning you're ill or you're away on a roundtable or city business. And we have attached a copy of that in your packet if you wish to review it. But we do operate via Zoom for public input as well. So public can contribute in Zoom, so we have a hybrid meeting. With that, I would normally open public comment for item number 5, but I think Zoom is still not working, so we'll have to come back to that. Let's continue this right here. So with that, Wednesday, even numbered month, first Wednesday of every month, 7 o'clock at this place. Do I have a member, let's first of all open for discussion. Any comments or discussion on the meeting, place, and time? Seeing none, do we have a member willing to make a motion to approve Resolution 24-01, designating the regular roundtable meeting date, time, and place for calendar year 2024?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries 13-0. So that will be the time and date and place for our meetings for next year. The next item is the assignment of subcommittees. To recap for our new members, we have 6 active subcommittees for the roundtable. The subcommittees meet typically in person during the normal business hours of Monday through Friday, normally 9 to 5, but the time and place can vary depending on the wishes of the chairman and the needs of the members. And we do give the chairman, in accordance with the executive committee, the flexibility to fix the time and date of those meetings. You do have attached in your packet on page 28 a listing of suggested dates for those subcommittees. And we're going to go through each of those subcommittees and
Recording in progress.
Typically 3 times a year. But again, personal discretion, capacity of staff to hold fewer or more meetings and at the times dedicated, and also based on need. We don't necessarily want to encourage meetings if there's no need for meetings on any basis. So we just give your person some discretion. Legislative committee meets twice a year, and the committee typically meets about 5 times a year. The work program committee meets in the April-May timeframe, and they're meeting for the purpose of bringing the work program to full members of the meeting. Our work program is on a fiscal year end, so that's what we have in June, and that's in July 1. So we do the focus of June. And then typically only meets once or twice and determines the work program of what the focus will be. In addition, we have the Ad-Hoc Employees Monitoring Placement Subcommittee, which is not scheduled for any meetings unless a need is identified. This is an ad-hoc subcommittee. And then every 3 years, we have a strategic subcommittee that updates our strategic plan for 1 or more meetings in October or November to present a recommended strategic plan to a regular roundtable meeting. And on chart 30, if you can turn to chart 30, you'll see a description of each of these subcommittees, what they're aligned to do, if I can find it myself here. Page 28 and page 30, and what determined by the chairperson. Are there any questions on subcommittees before we go through them? Does everybody have a packet, so on page 28 can identify the purpose of each subcommittee? If not, I'm happy to. We have other packets here. I think everybody has a packet. Okay, with that, let's just go through each of these subcommittees and see. I am starting with the presumption that if you are a returning member to the Roundtable and you were on the subcommittee last year, that unless you tell me otherwise, you'll continue in that subcommittee. And then in addition, we'll take new members on that subcommittee. So we'll go through each of the subcommittees now. The first one we'll go through.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm going to have to, I do have a situation at work that makes it very difficult for me to be here for the daytime meeting, so
Okay.
I'm going to have to remove myself from the technical working group committee.
Technical working group, okay.
Hurts, but I have to.
We're going to go through that one right now, by the way, so we'll take you off the list, Ricardo, and thank you. The technical working group typically is a committee which holds the more in-depth technical discussions on the different issues that the Roundtable is working on. It has been chaired by Sam Hindi in the past, and Sam has agreed to chair it again this year, and I will appoint him as the chair. Members last year included Terry O'Connell, Kai, is down the end down there, and Judith Haskin, who's not here this evening, and then Ricardo. And Ricardo, I appreciate you indicating your conflicts. This is probably one of the more interesting committees. They're all interesting because it does determine some of the technical issues, and we do get in depth. So if you really have a feel for knowing some more about the Roundtable and some of the issues we're dealing with, this is a great committee to be on. Typically, we like 3 to 5 members on every committee, but we're not limited. And every member of the subcommittee is eligible for any one of the subcommittee meetings and eligible for more than one. Is there any interest in anyone serving on that committee? Okay. We will go with the 4 right now. And by the way, we're not going to finalize committee assignments tonight. I'm trying to get indication of people that have an interest in serving, and then we'll make the decision and get back to you in an email of who's on what committees. Okay, just so you know that. Okay. With that, the next, by the way, Sam, did you want to say anything about the technical working committee? I should have asked you before. I apologize.
Thank you, Al. You covered it, number 1. Number 2, I just want to mention that everybody is welcome, even though if you do not elect to be or volunteer to be on the subcommittee, you're always welcome to come to the meeting and join the discussion as well. So we appreciate the more, the merrier.
Yep. Thank you.
If I may.
Yes, please, Terry.
For me, the technical working group is really interesting and informative, even if you don't know a lot about it today or right now, that coming to the meetings or participating as a member or just, as a member of the group really gives you a lot more information and time to get some questions answered, and really to understand the information that's going to come back later to this group. So while you may not feel that you've got a big amount of knowledge to partake, to pass on in these meetings, that you're not technically involved, it really gives you an understanding of what's going on, and I think everyone can benefit by serving on this committee or attending the committee, because you really do get a lot more information, are able to understand things and talk about it in real language, and have one-on-one with staff and with the people who are brought in to give technical information. So I highly recommend it for anyone who's, remotely, if you're sitting here tonight, you're remotely interested in it. So, I think that it's a good stepping in place to get more information and learn about what this group does.
Thank you, Terry. That's very helpful. And welcome, Carol. We'll let the record show you're present. Appreciate you being here. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions or comments on the technical working group? And by the way, if you decide later you have an interest, please let me know, or Kathleen know, and we'll follow up. So, The next committee I want to just briefly go through is the Ground-Based Noise Subcommittee. The purpose of this committee is to identify and remediate sources of ground-based noise. This is a more relatively new committee, although it's been in operation, I think, for 3 or 4 years now. And we just completed a pretty detailed study of ground-based noise, the sources of it, and how it spreads out through communities close to the airport. Current members on it included myself, Sandy Alvarez, and Ricardo. Were the current members. Again, and this typically meets 2 to 3 times a year. Okay. Members that I'd like to appoint to it would be the 3 current members. Ricardo, if you're able or not? Not?
I'm going to, yeah. I'm
Okay.
sorry, yeah.
Okay, so myself and Sandy, and then Angelina has volunteered for that. And Angelina, I appreciate that. Thank you. Are there other members that would have an interest in serving in the ground-based noise committee? Terry?
I hate to be taking on more right now, but I think that this is really important for the northern counties or the northern cities. It's an item that particularly affects the communities from Hillsborough north,
Yep.
and Brisbane is one of them. If there isn't other interest from another northern community, I would be happy to go on it and try to get up to speed on it, because they're doing some really groundbreaking studies and looking at a lot of things that could be very important moving forward.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We'll put your name down there. Other members that may have an interest on ground-based noise? Okay, I think we have 4 members. Okay. The next committee I want to run through is the committee that I currently chair, the Legislative Subcommittee. Legislative Subcommittee is a committee of this roundtable which is focused on identifying issues that may be relevant that are currently being discussed at the federal level primarily, to review and propose or advocate for legislation that we've deemed to be beneficial to the roundtable in our communities, and to identify regulations and the process in which they're being enacted. This has been a fairly active committee. In the last couple of years, we've written 2 letters, one of which was the letter on noise metrics. Some of you may be familiar with it. And then last year, we wrote a letter in support of the FAA reauthorization, along with a number of caveats. Both letters were well received, and I think I've been told been used as models for other roundtables. And I'll speak a bit about the current status of legislation when we get to the subcommittee reports. Current members of the Legislative Committee include myself, Pam Giovanni, Rob Newsom, and Robin Manganeris. Again, I presume you will all continue unless you tell me otherwise. Great, I appreciate that. Are there other members that may have an interest? Angelina? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, in our conversation, it kind of depends on the time. So
Yep.
if I can participate, I will
That'd be
definitely
great.
attend.
We will put you down, and I will have a survey, and we'll try to find times that can best accommodate the schedules. We have some flexibility in that. Okay, let's move to the next committee, which is the Ad-Hoc Portable Noise Monitoring Placement Subcommittee. This recommends the SFO placement locations of the 4 community portable noise monitors. There are a number of noise monitors that are operated by the airport. These are the 4 portable ones that we can move around based on roundtable input. Currently chaired by Terry O'Connell. I think, Christine, were you a member of that committee last year?
I was, but there was only one meeting and I couldn't attend.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to have you on it again unless you have a conflict. This only meets if there's a need for some discussion over the location of those portable monitors. Any other interest in serving on that committee?
Through the chair.
Yes, Pam?
When are the meetings?
The meetings will be determined by the chairperson of the committee, by Terry, but it's on an as-needed basis, so there's no fixed meeting per se.
I'd like to be on the committee.
Okay, Pam?
There's enough room. Thank you.
Good, okay. Okay, Terry, Pam, and Christina. Okay. Okay, Christine, I'm sorry, not Christina, I apologize. The next subcommittee is the Work Program Subcommittee, and this identifies the Roundtable's focus for the upcoming 12 months, from July 1 through the year. This is where we'll be putting most of our time and effort. It meets in the April-May time period. There's only a limited number of meetings. I think members last year, if I can look at were Sam, myself, Kai, and Terry. So I'm assuming the four of us will continue on that committee. Are there any other, Kai, is that fine?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Are there other members that may have an interest in serving on this? Angelina? Angelina, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Others? Okay. Again, if you think about it later and you have a desire to serve, please let us know. And then the last committee we have is the Strategic Plan Subcommittee. This committee meets every 3 years, and it determines a longer-term, multi-year plan for the Roundtable. It conducts a survey to gather the interests of the members on the issues they want to pursue, and then the committee meets and prioritizes that and determines which issues we will present to the Roundtable at the end of the year for us to determine and work on over a longer period of time. Current members of that well, there are no current members because we haven't met for 3 years. So typically the chair, the vice chair, and the past chair serve on that committee. So assuming Terry and Sam would be okay with that, we'll do 3. Are there other members that would like to serve on this? This is an interesting committee because you have a tendency to look at the issues on a broad scale and look over a longer period of time where the focus might be of this.
Did you say the meeting was in April or this says October?
No, strategic plan. I'm sorry, if I said that I misspoke. Normally it's October, November. Okay. Yeah. Normally it's at the end of the year and then we bring it to the Roundtable for approval in December has been the typical format. Christine?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Others? Okay. Paul, I'm going to ask you if you have any interest. I know you've had a lot of interest in noise metrics. I wonder if this might be something you'd be interested in.
It's very likely that I won't even be on the Woodside Town Council for much longer. So.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, we'll let you off. Thank you, though. Appreciate it. Okay, again, if other people have an interest between now and then, please let me know. Okay. Typically now I would open for public comment on these committees and the assignments and any input, but public comment is still not working? Is that correct? Okay. So we'll have to defer that for now. As I said, for now, these members that I mentioned tonight have been appointed, but I'm going to keep it open and give some members time to consider further if they'd like to join or have an interest in any one of these committees, including those members who cannot make it tonight. Okay?
Put it on a phone, pull it up to the speaker.
Who? FAA? Yeah, right now, let's do that one. Yeah, let's do this one. Yeah, let's do FAA. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'm going to, at this point in time, just ask Ms. Gonzalez if she could briefly screenshot the members of the public who are on the Zoom, even though we're not able to hear them. Is that screenshot up there? Okay, I'm not sure I could read that. Could you mind reading that? If not, Kathleen can read it. She has it right in front of her. So. Kathleen, would you mind reading it?
Okay. The attendees I see showing on my screen are Mr. Remy Tan, Ms. Allison Kerher from United, Darlene Yapley, Denise Laponte, Jennifer, Mary Jo Fremont, and that's all I show on mine panel. The others are all panelists.
Well, maybe I should be the guy.
Okay. Thank you. And again, I do apologize for our technical difficulties. Once they are resolved, we'll allow you to comment both on items not on the agenda and to go back and comment on the items that we've already discussed. And if necessary, we'll revisit any of the items. But
Mr.
again, our
Chair.
apologies. Yes.
Can I get a point of clarification in terms
Sure.
of the rules? My understanding of if we're doing a meeting with the public through Zoom, we are not allowed to continue the meeting until the technical difficulties are fixed and the meeting has to be paused.
Actually, I think you might be right, Mark. My apologies. I think you might be right. Do we have any time, 10 minutes?
Because if we do have public comment and they want to
Yes.
participate.
No, you're exactly right. My apologies.
Thank you, Mark.
I'm being told we have about 10 minutes to resolve it. Is that correct? Okay, so let's take a 10-minute pause,
Right.
and we'll come back.
Thanks, Mark.
That's what happens when it's hammered over the head with me.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's on. Could I ask you to please take your seats and we'll get started here. I will reconvene the meeting. I understand they're still working on the technical issues. Members on Zoom could hear us, but we cannot hear them. So what we will do is go through our presentations at this point in time, at least the one, because the first presentation was going to be made by a couple people on Zoom. So we will defer that until we get the technical issues resolved. But in the interim, we'll go to the second presentation this evening. Public comment was not going to be taken until these presentations were done anyway, so we can do that. Once we restore our Zoom facilities, we'll give the public an opportunity to comment. And then, based on comments, we'll go back and re-vote on the 2 items that we voted on earlier. Or I guess there's 3 items that we voted on earlier. Does that sound logical to everybody? Thank you. And Mark, I again appreciate you bringing that to our attention. No, I appreciate that. Okay, with that we're going to go to item number 8 on the agenda. Item number 8 on the agenda is the presentation dealing with advanced air mobility. I think many of you know that one of the hottest topics existing today deals with advanced air mobility, depending on what it's called, and depending on how you define it. And we're going to do a series of presentations over the next 3 or 4 meetings dealing with different components of air mobility, because this is really the Wild West in the sense of what it is, who's got authority over, what the different rules are, and what it might mean to our communities. And I think it behooves us to get up to speed on it and build the awareness around it, is all the different legislative bodies determine what actions they should take and what actions are within their purview. I agree. So we thought over the next few meetings we'd have some sort of discussion on it to lay the groundwork on it. We're very pleased this evening to have Tim Middleton of HMMH with us. Tim has given this presentation in Southern California before. It's been modified a bit as we learn more. And after Tim has had a chance to present, we then take questions or comments. And Tim, if you want to take comments during the meeting, please let us know. But if you prefer to wait at the end, we can do that too.
Okay, that sounds
good.
good.
With that, Tim, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tim Middleton, a principal consultant with HMMH, and the technical noise consultant to the Roundtable. And so my presentation today will be an update on advanced air mobility. I presented to the legislative subcommittee, I believe in May 2022 on this topic, and it is moving fast. So this is the agenda. This is the kind of items I'm going to cover. I will not be able to cover every aspect of AAM, but I will look to try to provide a somewhat of a 201 level update on where things are in terms of the developments. And so I do have a lot of pictures in here, and you can see that aircraft is actually the Joby S4 with a pilot. Their initial test flights were being flown autonomously or remote piloted, and then now they are at the piloted stage.
Tim, if I can interrupt 1 minute, the presentation is in your packet starting on page 31, if you wish to make notes or follow that way. Excuse me, Tim.
Oh, no problem. So what I like to do to start this presentation is just show some images and use one of the most repeated quotes that I think a lot of people have seen. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And you can see the drawing from Leonardo da Vinci about a flying machine. And so the idea of flying machine in flight and powered flight has been around for hundreds of years. But what we're dealing with now is the advancement of technology to move aviation forward in a new way. So the top left, that's a Whisk Generation 5 autonomous eVTOL. On the top right, that's a C-130 military transport within the V-22 Osprey, which is a tilt-rotor aircraft, probably the most well-known tilt-rotor aircraft in the world. And then the Beta aircraft on the bottom left, and then the bottom right is the first helicopter, production helicopter that Sikorsky made in, I think that was late 50s, early 60s. So for advanced air mobility, so the purpose of that is that air mobility in general is an advancement, right? It's an advancement of transportation. It's allowing people and goods to move in the air in a faster way than on the ground. And so some of these definitions, advanced air mobility, 5 years ago, I don't think AAM was actually a term. And it kind of seemed to have been defined around 2020, 2021 in the pandemic. And the definition here is what was defined by Congress in the AAM Coordination and Leadership Act, and they define it as AAM as a transportation system that moves people and property by air between 2 points in the U.S. using aircraft with advanced technologies, including electric aircraft or electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft in both controlled and uncontrolled airspace. So the key element to AAM is that it's not one single technology. It is an all-encompassing term for new types of aircraft that are potentially going to be entering into service in the airspace. Regional air mobility is a term that's been around before advanced air mobility, but in the context of AAM, is referring to more shorter flights in terms of connecting suburbs and towns and villages and more rural areas with urban city centers. And so that can be, regional air mobility can be traditional aircraft, so smaller props or turboprop aircraft. But there is a business case, and it looks like there's a potential use case that these electric aircraft will allow a lower cost of entry for air travel, potentially. Urban air mobility is a specific term within AAM referring to intercity air travel, so to fly from one side of the city to the other side of the city. For the Bay Area, flights across the Bay would probably be considered urban air mobility flights, right? So if you're going from San Francisco to Oakland to San Jose, if you're going over the Bay, that kind of thing, those would be kind of urban air mobility type flights. Drone is a generic term for any aircraft without a pilot. UAS is originally unmanned aircraft systems, now uncrewed aircraft systems, and it's the technical term for drones. And there's kind of two separations of drones, the small UAS, which are defined within 14 CFR Part 107, which pretty much anyone can get a pilot's license for that. You have to go through the pilot's license for it to fly it. But those are the more hobby drones, the camera drones that you see people flying with YouTube and all that stuff. Large UAS, there are not many of them yet, but the large UAS, the most well-known is the Predator drone, which the United States military uses, which is a turboprop aircraft that is remotely piloted, and that's been in service for, I think, well over a decade. And so there are other larger UAS, and that's the large UAS is what some of these AAM vehicles are looking to enter into that space. BV loss is beyond visual line of sight, and that has to do with controlling and operating drones outside of the sight of the pilot. So small UAS, you have to be, the pilot on the ground has to maintain visual range of the aircraft. BV loss is remotely piloting aircraft without actually seeing it. eVTOL is electric vertical takeoff and landing, and then that graphic is showing short takeoff and landing and vertical takeoff and landing, and that's from the FAA's document Innovate 28. And then CTOL is conventional takeoff and landing. So the another thing with advanced air mobility is it is potentially allowing the opportunity to have shorter field takeoffs and operations in aircraft in a potentially different way than we're used to, of longer takeoffs getting on the wing, where they might be able to take off kind of vertically and that kind of like short takeoff, as you can see there. And so what is enabling that is these kind of new vehicle type concepts. And the vehicle type concepts here, this is a graphic from SMG Consulting, and they have a website called the AAM Reality Index, which is often cited as a way to kind of track the industry. And you can see there's multi-copter design, lift and cruise. And the difference between lift and cruise, think of more on the wing or traditional type aircraft. And you can see in the graphic, the arrows pointing backwards is more of the cruise, and then the lift is the pushing down. Vectored thrust is also a term for tilt rotor. So you have rotors that can operate horizontal plane and then they go vertically, or they can move differently depending on how you want to position and move the aircraft. Augmented lift is a new technology that's being implemented as part of AAM, where they are integrating engines into the leading edge of the wings. So there's multiple designs. Some are ducted fans inside the wings. Some are propellers or other propellers or jets that are kind of on the front of the wing in a way that traditionally we haven't seen before, and that's because of the smaller electric motors and the battery technology and the technology that's allowing for these kind of developments. And then conventional is on the right, where you have an engine that provides thrust, and then you get enough thrust, and then you can generate lift on the wings and conventional aircraft. Here's some just more examples of vehicle types. You can see the multicopters. This large picture is from, it's Elroy Air, and this would be a large UAS, and this is a cargo capable aircraft. And this is one of the first use cases I think we're going to be seeing more of these aircraft are, because cargo, you can move cargo in smaller spaces. You don't have to, I mean, you can move boxes. You can't move people in boxes, right? And so cargo is the ability to kind of move smaller packages and then kind of grow that size. So it's kind of as part of the crawl, walk, run, cargo is more of kind of the crawl use case. And you'll see business cases for last mile UAS, which is like Walmart, Amazon, looking to deliver small packages from their distribution centers to the residences. It's also being used around the world right now, but it's being used to deliver medical supplies. So in areas that don't have airports, you can fly these drones that have maybe 100 to 200 pound capacity, and you can drop off vaccines, you can drop off, medical supplies that people need, as opposed to trying to truck it in. You can fly it in. So there are a lot of use cases for flying to get you over and through things. And the idea is hopefully these electric vehicles will provide a cheaper cost of entry to allow for it. Medical operations, again, for patients, organs, blood supplies. I mean, medevac helicopters helicopters and medevac is probably the most well-known use for helicopters. There is a use case for electric vertical takeoff and landing, replacing some of those operations because the designs allow them to potentially fly in more narrow areas or different areas where traditional Sikorsky 76s and larger rotor craft might not be able to operate, so that it could potentially build on life-saving opportunities for people. And then obviously passengers, so movement of people, goods, and services. The people is the passengers, and inter- and intra-city travel. On-demand air taxis and scheduled service are kind of the business cases that are being shown now. And if you've flown United has a advertisement on like all their seats saying that they're going to have, they have an agreement with Archer where they potentially are going to fly taxis or air taxis from a city center to an airport, et cetera. So for the Roundtable here, that's something to be aware of, that it is coming. It is something that the airlines are supporting in terms of development, and so I think it's definitely it's not a mature state, but it's definitely at a place where it's going to start growing, and so the shaping of the policy can be happening now. So some infrastructure considerations as part of advanced air mobility. NASA did a report on regional air mobility, which I referenced. So there's over 5,000 airports in the United States, and a lot of them are underserved and underserved to the community because it's just smaller prop traffic or turboprop traffic. And there is a potential use case to have more flights at smaller airports to allow people to move more efficiently. And as part of that and part of regional air mobility, there's also looking at vertiports. And so vertiports is not a new term, but it's being a redefined term for the ability, for the area for aircraft that are advanced air mobility to land and take off. So heliports are just for traditional helicopters. In the 80s, heliports were called vertiports, and I think in the early 70s they had the name. But vertiport right now has kind of been defined. The FAA released an Engineering Brief 105, which is providing guidance on vertiports. And you can see in the graphics, essentially, there's different control areas where if you're designing an area for a landing and takeoff, where you have to have free space for the design of the aircraft to operate. There is an updated engineering brief that I have heard is supposed to be released by the end of the month, which people in the industry are looking forward to. So there's going to be a new engineering brief on it. And the reason the engineering brief has to keep being updated is the manufacturers themselves are still in an iterative process of developing their aircraft. So Archer announced, I think today, that they have 3 final design version of their Midnight aircraft that should be going into service or into testing soon, right? A year ago, Archer didn't have any full-size aircraft. Joby is now saying that they're developing more full-size aircraft. So as there's more information and more public available information about the performance characteristics, these design guidelines will be shaped by some of that. And so the FAA we're anticipating the FAA to update this later in the year. As part of it, for operations and for noise and for considerations, most of you have probably seen something like this, but this is the airspace in the United States. So one of the things to consider for noise and operational airspace consideration, right, is where the aircraft going to fly, because where they are is where people are bothered by them, if they are bothered by them. And so there's different classes of airspace. Class A is the jet route air traffic, 18,000 feet to 60,000 feet. And then there are and these are all the classes are controlled airspace. And so Class B is the larger international airports. Class C is a smaller regional type airports, and Class D is a smaller general aviation or regional. It's not with control with towers. And then there's non-towered airports, et cetera. And the FAA remains the regulator of the airspace and control of the airspace. And the thing to also to remember is that the regulatory regime where aircraft fly now and operate has been developed over 100 years. And so any new entrants, if Boeing is making a new airliner, it has to follow the rules to get certified, to fly in the airspace, to fly in controlled airspace. And these new designed aircraft have to follow FAA regulations. And so ultimately they know that, and they're developing aircraft in a way that will be able to operate within these space. Part of that makes it a little bit more unique that they're dealing with is the UAS and the potential for a higher number of operations of the UAS case of the drones or the uncrewed aircraft. And the National Airspace System itself right now is complex. And so the FAA is addressed this. They released a ConOps, or Concept of Operations 1.0 in, I think it was 2020. ConOps 2.0 was released this summer. And what this graphic is kind of showing, on the left in the blue is all the traditional, what is occurring now. And the green is the concept of operations for what they're calling extensible traffic management, or a way to manage traffic that is still FAA oversight, but they're in, they'd be kind of like zones or regions where you're still within controlled airspace, but you are at a certain flight level where there would be potentially AAM operations or UAM operations in a given corridor or flight. And in the ConOps, there's a whole bunch of different graphics about that. It's very similar to, in New York, there's the Hudson River corridor from the George Washington Bridge to the Statue of Liberty. which is an exclusion corridor where if you're at a certain altitude, you're in the airspace, but you can't go above it, can't go below it. That is not a one-to-one, but that's kind of what they're looking at in terms of how the CONOPS is designed. So basically, you develop it, you know that you can have a three-dimensional cutout where in that airspace, once you enter it here, you'll fly it, and then you can exit in certain areas. And so they show maps in the CONOPS about potential entry and exit points for the UAM. And so you'd have entry and exit points of where you get into a potential corridor or out of the corridor. And all of it is within controlled airspace, but then there's this layer on top of it that they are potentially going to add. This is a picture actually of the New York airspace. And NASA and FAA are working with manufacturers to gather the data on certification of these aircraft. We know that community annoyance and noise and being bothered by aircraft is something that is no longer just the sound level. People are bothered by noise that might not be high decibel levels, as was shown by the Neighborhood Environmental Survey with the updated the updated annoyance curves. And the FAA this summer did the noise policy review, and I think there was the comment earlier about putting together feedback on that. So the industry and the regulators are aware that where aircraft fly and how they fly is something that the community really wants to have a voice in, or at least be aware of and understand where aircraft are flying. And currently, noise metrics are still defined FAA Order 1050.1F, so the Part 150 process and the NEPA process, the CEQA process. And so, the land use regulations and the noise regulations haven't changed, and those are still being potentially looked at. For modeling aircraft, and so one of the things we do, you model aircraft noise to generate annual contours, to generate future case conditions, and the modeling of these aircraft has been a little bit of a white whale to try to figure out, to get the data from some of the operators. And part of that is that the operators or the builders of these aircraft, there's a lot of industry secrets, and they don't, they want to be the first to market. They don't want their competitors to know how their 6 rotors are operating versus the other 8 rotors. Like, do you have the batteries in the back of the plane, the front of the plane? And so because of the actual industry secrets on it, it's harder to get this data. Now, NASA worked with Joby to get data, and there's a national program that NASA would provide staff and equipment as part of their mobile acoustics lab to generate and get this data. So the data is getting received, but what NASA has done is they helped develop a tool called the Advanced Acoustics Model, which gives my colleague Joe Check heartburn, because we use the Advanced Acoustics Model, which is AAM, to model Advanced Air Mobility, which is AAM. So there's 2 AAMs, and it's acronym soup. But the Advanced Acoustics Model is on its 3rd revision. It uses not to get too technical in the weeds, but it uses more advanced algorithms and more advanced processing that it's a simulation model, and simulation models allow for some higher fidelity modeling. And so Advanced Acoustics Model can model to what's called 1/12 octave bands, so it's smaller ranges of noise. And the reason for that is that what they're finding as they develop more of these aircraft is that they're creating tones and energy, they're tones and pitches that we haven't really heard before, because these are the first time we're building a vehicle with 6 rotors that are powered by electric motors, and these electric motors didn't exist 10 years ago. And so because of that, the physics of moving a 5,000 to 10,000 pound object in the air and getting it airborne and keeping it in the air is generating noise in a way, generating energy and sound in a way that is new. And so because of that, we're developing ways to model it. But NASA has developed two kind of surrogates called the quadcopter and the lift plus cruise. So if you remember that when I showed the different vehicle types, the quadcopter is just 4 electric rotors, and then the lift plus cruise is 4 rotors, and then 2 that push and 4 that push back, and so it has these different phases of flight. And the advanced acoustics model allows for more fidelity in terms of when the rotors move and you change configurations and things like that, which is another aspect of AAM that, in terms of community annoyance and being bothered by it or understanding the operations of it, the transition from vertical flight to on-the-wing flight or on-the-wing flight to vertical flight, we don't know, when and where they'll do that, what's the most efficient way to do that, and that's part of what's being developed in terms of the ConOps and how they're going to be operating. But the graphic here shows its comparison to the CH-146, which is the Huey, I think it's the Huey, military single rotor. But you can see from the DNLs, the electric quadcopters and the lift plus cruise are much quieter acoustically. They have a lot less acoustic energy as they operate. So they efficiently move the vehicles, but the actual sound, we are still, getting more data on, et cetera. So some plans of state and federal states are looking into this just as the federal government is. California passed SB 800, which essentially, it basically says to look at advanced air mobility and integrate it into the California State Transportation Plan. So Caltrans is working through implementing SB 800 and what over the next few years, how that's going to be integrated, because the range of these aircraft is less than traditional aircraft, so it's like 50 to 250 miles, and because of that, that's where these vertiports are potentially being designed, and so there is a need for potential more integration with existing infrastructure, and so that's what these state plans are looking at in terms of how to integrate this additional type of transportation. And then the last bullet point there is the Department of Transportation. There's an interagency working group which regularly meets with all the experts in the field, and they post minutes and notes on what they're talking through and how they are looking to address the development of these aircraft. So these two aircraft, this is actually the Archer Maker in the back and the Archer Midnight, which is their full-size production level aircraft. And you can see there's the iterations of it. They're similar, but they're a little bit different. And so for this roundtable and for airport operators and for people to consider as these aircraft are entering into service is the development of their flight paths, right? Because optimized flight paths for power, meaning slower battery drain, might not be the same as a noise abatement flight path. And if you need to get the aircraft up before they go out, that might take more power. So there's those trade-offs are something to be considered as these aircraft start to enter into service. The two links, the one is I mentioned the FAA's Innovate 28, where they've laid a kind of a groundwork for operators and airports and anyone in the industry or anyone that is interested in what's happening in the industry to review, and they call it a crawl, walk, run approach. So it's basically a framework to get to 2028, and then obviously between now and then they'll be updating things. But it's and then the GAO report is I have this here because as I mentioned earlier, enhanced noise metrics, this GAO report said that the FAA could improve outreach through enhanced noise metrics, which is what the FAA has acknowledged in terms of the noise policy review, et cetera. So the reason I have this on here is that over the past year, the FAA has been very clear that they are, number one, aware of the results, obviously, of the neighborhood environmental survey, which is why they did the noise policy review, and they're adjudicating comments for that. And so they're looking at ways to potentially address new entrants into the airspace, which would be these aircraft. And I guess 2 points I wanted to make here too, just to understand, is that the reason most of these are coming to market now, and they've publicly said this, is that battery technology, these are mostly all powered by batteries. Joby has said in public filings, and I mentioned Joby because they're somewhat in the lead. I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't really, but the reason battery technology keeps getting better and more efficient, right? If you remember in the 90s, like you had camcorders with these big NICAD batteries that lasted like, an hour. And now we have iPhones that last for like 2 days, right? So battery technology is better, and it's getting better. And the idea is that they're at the point now where the battery efficiency, the power efficiency is only going to increase with the same amount of weight. And so because of that, they now are developing these aircraft, and they're going to refine over time, just the way our cell phones have refined over time, is the belief in what's going to occur. The other part is that these aircraft are really only being designed because of the ability to design them is because of the higher end computer power in terms of computational fluid dynamics and all the complexities of flying multiple rotor aircraft and keeping them in lift, et cetera. So it's not only the battery technology, but computing power has allowed us now as a civilization, I guess that's true. But the computing power is allowing to design these things, but they have clearly said they're designing them based off of safety, and the operators have given presentations about they're building in multiple levels of redundancy in terms of rotors, in terms of batteries, in terms of power, and things like that. So it's at the bleeding edge of technology, and that's kind of the update of where we are now, and I can take some questions. Hopefully I can answer some of them for people. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. The purpose of this discussion was to start the conversation and provide some basic information on the definition of AAM, the different types of vehicles that fall under it, the different categories of vehicle, and what they're designed to do. And that's what this conversation was meant to do. Other issues about that we will get into, but not tonight, will be who has the power to regulate what, which will be a big one, and how do we enable an effective public voice providing input to AAMs. So that's critical to us, but we will not do that tonight. But what I want to do right now is discuss exactly what the presentation was, exactly what AAMs are and the different categorizations. Carol?
Thank you so much, Tim. That was really informative, and I think you covered a lot of ground. And I just wanted to mention that there are Bay Area connections to this, because Archer is at Palo Alto Airport. Their headquarters is there, and I was invited to see the midnight unveiling about a year or so ago, and they also started test flights of Archer aircraft in Salinas Airport. And also Joby is in Marina Airport, and Toyota has put over $4 million, it's more than that, $1 billion, yes, thank you, into that, and that's nearby. And they also, Joby has a battery factory in San Carlos, so it's all very close to us, and there's a huge seminar conference about this right now in Santa Clara, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, where people from all over, other companies as well, like Over Air, are participating in this. And so I think it's something that we all need to know about it, which is why I'm so grateful that you did it, because all these smaller airports like San Carlos and Reed Hillview and Palo Alto and all the other ones around are going to become a more important focal point for this type of aircraft, and they're going to be even more valuable than they are now, which I'm sure a lot of people would dispute, but they are. And I think it's important that we know about it. And one of the key things that you mentioned is that they're all going to be quieter vehicles than what we have now. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank
Are there other comments or questions over the presentation? Yes, okay.
Through the chair.
John?
Thank you. Yeah, through the chair. Tim, good presentation. I think if I could share with the rest of the roundtable, I could go through Ms. Wentworth and share the link, and Tim, it might be on your presentation. It's called NASA's Creating an Advanced Air Mobility Playbook, and it's a great website. It has short videos, talks about things like emergency response, healthcare, automation, vertiports, with a lot of links. So I'll share that, like I said, with Kathleen, right? And you can.
Yeah,
send it
I've
to her.
participated over the past 4 years now on some of the NASA working groups, and they have some of the best graphics explaining how these aircraft are going to fly and how they integrate. Yeah, so the NASA's good, because NASA actively has to remind people that they don't just do space. It's National Aeronautics and Space Administration. So they're helping to lead as well in terms of developing it. So that's good. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Good. Kai?
Just very briefly, in terms of the mission of this committee, what I thought, and you mentioned it later in your presentation, Tim, is with electric cars, they're so much quieter than gas-powered cars. So then later you mentioned that they're more quiet. I was just making that comparison.
Yeah, they are quieter. There's a video. Joby has posted a video showing different helicopters you may be familiar with, and then their aircraft flying. Obviously, it's produced by them. It's, but it is their sound, and that's what we've been hearing from people is that you can obviously still hear them, but the idea is they're trying to design them in a way where the sound energy you hear isn't annoying. So they're trying to make the sound not noise, right? And so like when we describe sound versus noise, it's like if you go to a rock concert and it's 110 decibels, it's awesome. If you're, next to an aircraft that's departing, it's like, no, this is really annoying, right? And so there's the different levels of, as you know, of annoyance to sound. And so they say that they're trying to engineer it in a way that it's not going to be as bothersome, but yeah.
Christine?
Some of the noise studies, that we've looked at in the last year, it's not just the individual over time, right, that are real troubling to the community. So it'll be interesting to see how that's evaluated as well. And then I just have nightmares myself, like thinking of all the Amazon trucks, suddenly becoming airborne drones, all over our sky space, and how disturbing that is visually also. I mean, is that something that will be studied or that, maybe we take on and other environmental impacts with birds and, so forth, with so many of these.
Like NEPA addresses visual disturbance, but the NEPA language, it's more like the lights for visual disturbances, right? So if like you build something that has lights shining into people's houses, that's more, so.
Unfortunately, we've lost audio on our Zoom.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to have to pause for a few minutes. I again apologize. Not sure what more to say, but if you could, it's such a great conversation, but could you hold your thoughts for a few minutes and we'll come back to them. So.
The audio seems to be back on.
Is it back on? Okay, I've just been notified it's back on, so we can reconvene. So, thank you, Kathleen. Okay, we had the comment about the quantity of the noise, not just the amount of the noise, or not just the sound of a single vehicle. Are there other thoughts or comments on this? And by the way, I would only add, this is happening faster than you might think. These facilities are being put up right now as we speak. Supervisor Pine.
If you could just look into the future for us, it's 10 years from now, 2034. What are the most promising use cases? There's hundreds of ideas for where this technology will be deployed, but
so I think I think one of the most promising use cases is a replacement. One use case is a replacement of traditional rotorcraft. And the reason I say that is like Blade calls them, Blade is they're a charter company that flies traditional Sikorskis and Bells. I think a lot of existing helicopters will be replaced with a version of some of these electric aircraft because it'll allow them to operate more efficiently, potentially, and back and forth, quieter. And then I think the use case for cargo and moving not just small packages, but being able to move 1,000 pounds of cargo from one place to another place. I think in terms of quick deliveries and things, that's going to be, you're going to see a higher level of that flight. The air taxi case, it's just an order of magnitude. I think the air taxi case is going to take longer to develop, I think. Just because right now, even Joby's designing it with 4 passengers, right? So it's a small level of passengers. So I think it's going to be more replacement traditional aircraft rotors, and then developing out these networks as more of them reach scale of the level. It's a little bit interesting because they're technology companies that are building aircraft. It's not aircraft companies building new aircraft. And with the car manufacturers funding a lot of them, that's the other piece of it, right? So you mentioned, car manufacturers know how to build at scale. And there's this amalgamation of car manufacturing and aircraft manufacturing they're meeting at the middle, and we'll see how that goes. But that's my kind of long-winded answer for 2034, so.
Are there other, Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tim, thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate being in my first meeting, kind of getting thrown into this. A couple of questions, I think the infrastructure is really a question in terms of where we put this, in terms of having more space, the ability to have this. As one of my colleagues was talking about having Amazon kind of flying all over the place, there's also the human element of it as well. And I know that not really our part of our committee, but as we move into more automated vehicles, jobs are kind of switching more to be taken away. And I don't know if studies have looked at what happens to the human element if this, for example, packages are now just going to be using drones. Mm-hmm. But there's a human element side of this too that, that I think about. And I appreciate about learning about the noise too, as we all have heard in terms of complaints about just how noisy planes can be. If this can be a dramatic change and shift in terms of perspective and noise, I think that's really beneficial to the community. And maybe you can answer this question. I'm learning about this now, so I don't know, as we potentially shift to passenger, I don't know how affordable it is in terms of having this kind of technology. If it's expensive now, you might not have as many people participating until you have the infrastructure and having more of these things readily available. Just my comments.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to think, but yeah, that's. I mean, air travel now is more expensive than ground travel, right? Mm-hmm. Like buying a generally, depending on where you're flying, and so there is going to be a cost of entry, and any new form of transportation is more expensive, right? I mean, it's expensive to buy cars when you're buying the first cars, and so I think it's going to take longer, but I think like now is the time to develop the framework and work on developing the framework to say, okay, like as these come to scale, we'd like them to be operating here, not here. And those are kind of long-term, those are planning discussions that you can kind of start to have now in terms of where you want to place the vertiports and that kind of a thing, yeah, so.
Okay, we'll take one more comment, if I might, Past Chairman Indy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tim, for the presentation. This is definitely one of those technologies that's going to transform the airspace, in my opinion. And it seems like the implementation is going to be very rapidly moving. And the big question really for us here is when that time comes, as far as the noise, how's that going to be? And I echo Christine's, it's not necessarily that single event, but the frequency, just because of the use of these vehicles, how it's going to be in so many different ways. So you're going to see a lot more usage than helicopters, and they're going to be, I think eventually they're going to be scaled. So, more to see.
We'll do a couple more. Carol, do you have a comment? Microphone, please.
Something that's always concerned me is separation of vehicles in the air. And I'm glad that the FAA and NASA and everybody else is working on this, because if we're having all these little new gnats flying around, how are they going to separate themselves from the airplanes, which are under positive control from various towers, or even not under positive control because they're flying both the airplanes and the UAM are flying at uncontrolled airspace? I think that's a serious issue, and I hope everybody's addressing it.
Right. Okay. Tim, I want to thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it very much. Very informative and very helpful. We will be having at least 2, if not 3 more discussions around AAMs. We are inviting industry to come to speak to us about what's going on from their perspective. We are thinking of having the Director of Aeronautics and CTAG come in at one of our meetings to talk about what the state might be doing. But we'll try to develop this more, because this is an evolving area, but it's happening pretty rapidly, and we need to be aware of it, number one. And number two, determine what our role is as we try to exert some influence and some input into this. But over and above our role, our communities need to be aware of this too, because there are land use considerations that are involved here too, that are outside the scope of this particular committee, but obviously will generate some discussion, some interest going forward. So with that, Tim, again, thank you very much. Stay tuned for further presentations and further discussion. We're not trying to rush a decision as to our role, but we are going to try to gather information so we can come to some conclusion over what we ought to be doing and what our role might be. So thank you. Okay, with that, we're going to move back to presentation right before this, which was the FAA was going to give us a brief update on the NIITE HUSH noise abatement procedures and what's been going on there. So with that, I think our speaker is going to be Ms. Chin. Is Ms. Chin available online?
This is Carlette Young. I'm going to do the brief.
Oh, can't hear her.
Can you hear me? This is Moifer. Can you hear me?
Very faint. Could you increase the volume?
No, it's on max. Can you speak, Carlette? Can you go up hear me? This is Carlette. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, we cannot hear you.
Yeah, no, Carlette and Moifer, it's not, the room cannot hear Zoom participants at this point. It's an education facility, not just for the...
Okay, we can hear you now. So please move forward. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Again, this is Carlette Young, FAA. Thank you, Chairman Royce, for providing me the opportunity to address the Roundtable members. I don't have a presentation this evening, but we wanted to continue to keep you updated on what we're working on. So tonight, I just wanted to share that we are continuing to look at expanding the hours for the nighttime noise abatement procedures for NIITE HUSH. The FAA, meaning our air traffic organization, our operations support group, and the other offices working on this are having discussions. There are a number of things that they are looking at and working through, and so those discussions are continuing. Once that's done, of course, we'll approach the San Francisco airport and work through those collaborations there and any steps that they need regarding the collaboration. So for now, we just wanted to share and let you know that we're working on it. We're working on expanding the hours of NIITE HUSH, and we're having the necessary internal discussions. We hope to have more information to share in the coming months.
Thank you, Carlette. And again, let me apologize for the audio and for the rescheduling of the topics on the agenda. We do appreciate you being here, and thank you very much. And we were looking forward to working with you on expanding the NIITE HUSH program. So I appreciate your comments on that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations.
Well, thank you, I think. Are there any questions or comments by members of the committee to Ms. Chen? or DeCarla, excuse me? Okay, hearing none. Again, thank you. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda then. That is the chairman's update. I'm gonna move on to item the airport directors and come back to chairman's comments because I know Ivor's got a commitment here. So Ivor, let me turn it over to you on a update on the report from the SFO noise, and then Bert will present the noise manager.
Great, thanks, Chair. And maybe just a quick comment on AAM from SFO's perspective, and I'll say that doesn't sound good, does it at all? I'm sorry. Maybe, yeah, can I try yours? Yeah. Oh, thanks. All right, hello. Boy, is it my voice? You know what? I'm going to just do it like this. Everyone can hear me? Okay.
Can they hear? I think you need it on Zoom. Sorry.
Can you hear? If I talk like this, can you hear me on Zoom? Okay, thank you. I'll say that SFO's position on AAM is, we're calling it cautiously curious. We really need to understand so much about what AAM does and the impacts and noise issues, but also power issues. These require tremendous energy to charge these units, and there are issues around power equity and communities that have, we go through blackouts and brownouts during the summer when there's heat waves, and so we really need industry to be leaning in on the power issues. And you heard about advancements in battery technology, which is great. I think this is going to be a successful outcome of what AAM and eVTOL development does. But we just have to be cautious. We have to be cautious around certainly the safety of the operation. And we are working closely with the FAA with that. And then just cautious about how it affects the communities. And so we are convening, we did host the World Air Taxi Congress in October, and we are putting a structure together and a framework to have broader conversations around local communities and the region. We're working on a scope of work with UC Berkeley to help moderate this, and it will happen probably the second quarter of this year, and it will be an engaged process with many stakeholders, including the local communities. So we are fully engaged in this discussion, and we'll continue to keep you informed. Passenger traffic, 50 million passengers we went over in 2023, and we're coming back strong from COVID. We're at about 90% of our pre-COVID levels from a passenger load perspective. International seats actually exceeded our COVID levels towards the latter half of the year. So we are coming back pretty strong. 2025 is still our forecast for full recovery. The grounding of the MAX, everyone's seen all of the press around that. We saw about 50 cancellations per day with that grounding, primarily affecting Alaska and United. Those flights have resumed flying the last weekend of January as the FAA inspections were completed. Our construction work on 28 left and the taxiways Delta and Tango construction is proceeding well. Even with the rains, we're still on schedule. Our intent is to have this work completed by the 1st of July. We're appreciative of the partnership with the FAA and the airlines, primarily United and Alaska, that have done schedule pull-downs to help mitigate some of the delays, because delays are noise issues to the communities, as you all know, and pushes flights into the midnight and later hours. And so we're pleased with the work that's been done to really help manage the construction and manage the impacts to the community. A couple new and resuming service. Canadian low-cost carrier Lynx Air will launch 4 times weekly to Toronto starting May 3rd. Arrives at 10:50 a.m., departs at 12:10 p.m., and that's a MAX 8. Korean carrier Air Premia will launch 4 times weekly to Seoul May 17th, arrives at 12:30 p.m., and departs at 3 p.m., and that's a Boeing 789. And then increased flight activity to Vegas, so y'all can get to watch the Niners this weekend. We have a total of 21 flights from United, up from 15, to support the Niners in Vegas. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions before I turn it over to Bert. I have an early flight to catch, so I'm going to ask Doug to step in, but I'd be glad to answer any questions anyone has.
Are there any questions or comments? Carol?
The weather, pretty typical with that kind of storm and those kinds of winds. Day of cancellations, not ideal because they become residents of the airport for a time. And it was pretty significant, the number of hundreds of cancellations, not atypical when we have our winter storms. So it was impactful because we went into such a low arrival rate. And the cancellations were a result of that.
And then some were diverted. I understand the Lufthansa was diverted, and some went to Oakland and ended up in LAX and stuff like that.
Right. Some really crazy things happened because of the changing conditions that happened in such a short time, from visibility to 60-mile-an-hour winds out of different directions, and has a significant impact on our operations. Thanks.
Other questions or comments? Director, thank you very much. We appreciate it and appreciate you being here. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Doug, if you would like to take the seat. Okay. Bert, let's go through your presentation, and then we'll go back and we're going to re-vote the 3 items that we took votes on after public comment, before we lose a quorum here. Although it is still my intention to get us out of here by 9:15 at the latest. So, Bert, floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to go over a few items with you this evening. First of all, on GBAS, following our last meeting, we were able to submit 4 Group 2A procedures to the FAA's IFP Gateway. And those would be the GLS Category 2, Runway 28 right, the GLS Category 2, Runway 19 left, and for those of you not totally aware, the Category 2 approaches run to a lower minimum. So instead of 2,400 feet, we'd be down around 1,200 feet visibility that the aircraft are allowed to come in at. The GLS down the bay, which is the 3rd one, you can see the hook going down the bay there. And then the GLS over water 2 to runway 28 right is the other one. In a moment, we'll tell you about the other. So on the 29th of January, we met with the Oakland Northfield Southfield Subcommittee, their research group, regarding our GLS side by 19 left. And they were going to bring it back to their noise forum at their April 17th meeting. We hear more about that. Hopefully they are fine with it, and we go ahead and put it on the Instrument Flight Procedures Gateway as well. The Group 1 procedures that we're hoping to be seen for publication this year have been pushed down the line about a year. So we're looking about February 20th now. The FAA's timelines have shifted, and so we're in that tide. The portable noise monitors should deploy in the first quarter, and we'll go ahead and get the data from that and make our initial measurement reports hopefully by the end of the second quarter. We are looking to get help with airlines flying the procedures. We're trying to work with Delta. It's proving to be a little difficult. So we're, and I'm not saying Delta's difficult, it's just the machinations are not totally smooth at this point. We're also working with, looking at Boeing right now to see if they might be willing to help us out too. So, you know, it's not a cheap thing to go throw one of those aircraft out there and have it do the approaches. And here we're asking them to do it without compensation. Wanted to also ask that everyone continue to submit their questions regarding the concept procedures. That way, if you have any questions and/or thoughts, we will be able to respond to those. Quick update on the noise insulation program, the repair and replacement initiative. You can see that we had 18 properties in the pipeline to be treated, with 63 completed for the cities of Millbrae, San Bruno, Daly City, South City as well. Let's see, jumping ahead. Looking at the Second Chance Initiative, we have the 20 properties in treatment progress, and then 76 completed. The expanded eligibility, or the post, let's see, here we are. The pre-93 program, sorry, I was about ready to mislabel that for us, is showing at 529 potentially eligible properties in the possible future, and for the 2022 and future phases. The 34 properties to be treated in 2024. So you can see there's a bit of a queue there for that one. And that will be the end of my update, unless the panel has any questions.
Thank you, Bert. Are there any questions or comments on the noise report? Yes, Christine?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just curious, because I was on the Portable Noise Monitor Committee, but I missed the meeting. Can you tell us where those are placed for this year?
Oh, we're still monitoring at Pacifica. And this is the Portable Noise Monitoring Subcommittee monitors, not the GBAS. So GBAS that I spoke of a moment ago, totally different set. For that committee, we are monitoring Pacifica. We're monitoring in Palo Alto. We were monitoring in East Palo Alto, but the East Palo Alto City Hall there, they're re-roofing it, so we got booted. And they say they won't finish till March, so we've lost 2 quarters now so far on that one. We're actually trying to see if we can relocate that to Menlo Park. We did try to get in with Meta. They thought it was a security issue, and they said unfortunately they cannot work with us.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments? Okay, Bert, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
We're going to, before I give the chairman's update, which is the last item under this section, I'm going to go back, before I lose a quorum, and go back and re-vote on items 1, 2, and 3, the election of the chairperson, the election of the vice-chairperson, and the setting of the date and timing of our schedule for the year. So item number 1, we're going to open public comment, the election of the chairman. There's been 1 nomination, it was Al Royce, and then nominations were closed. So are there any public comment? And Ms. Gonzalez, could you tell us if any hands are raised?
Here, let me see. Right now, we have no public comments via Zoom.
Okay, great. And by the way, I would note that we're going to take public comments on each of these 3 items. We'll then take public comment on that last section, all the presentations, and then we'll take public comment on non-agenda items. So if you're a member of the public and wish to comment, that will be the time. So with respect to number 1, there was no public comment, so I'm not going to open re-discussion. I am going to call for the vote. The nomination for chairman was Al Royce. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 13, I think it's 14-0 now. And let the record show we still have a quorum. In fact, we added 1 from the last time. Okay, item number 2 was election of the vice chairman. There was 1 nominee, Terry O'Connell. So now let me close the nominations again and ask if there's any public comment on the nomination for the vice chairperson. Ms. Gonzalez, do we have any hands raised from the public?
Chair, we don't have any hand raised. So,
Okay, and
yeah.
there's none in chambers either. So seeing there's no public comment, we'll close public comment and again take a vote on the vice chairmanship. Again, because there's no public comment, I will not reopen comments on this. So the motion was the nomination for Terry O'Connell for the vice chairmanship. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries again, 13 or 14 to nothing. I forget the exact number. So congratulations, Terry. And then the last item we needed to vote on was the item number 4. Let me find my notes here. That was the approval of the resolution designating the regular roundtable meeting dates, time, and place for calendar year 2024. Again, the first Wednesday of every even numbered month at 7:00 p.m. at this location, Cochiti Place, I think is how you pronounce it, in Millbury. Okay. Let's open public comment. Ms. Gonzalez, is there any public comment on item number 4? Or excuse me, item number 5. My apologies. Item number 5.
Chair, we don't have any public comments via Zoom.
Okay, and there's no hands raised or public comment in chambers, so accordingly we'll close public comment and again ask for a vote on the approval of the resolution. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So we have our schedule for the year. So thank you very much, by the way. Appreciate it. The other items did not, Chairman, Sam?
Yes, Chair, if you may, also maybe perhaps need to take public comments on the consent agenda.
Yes, thank you very much. Very excellent, thank you. We did have a vote on the consent agenda, and this was item, I think, number 1 on the agenda. Let me just double check that. I think it was that item 1?
Yes, 1 and 2.
1 and 2. 1 and 2, okay. Let's open up public comment. Ms. Gonzalez, do we have any hands raised on Zoom?
Chair, we do not have any public speaker via Zoom.
Okay, no public comment on Zoom. I see no hands or indication in chambers. So accordingly, no public comment on the consent agenda. We'll close public comment. And again, I think we took a vote on that, did we not?
We did.
We did. So all in favor of the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda approved. Thank you, Mr. Andy. Okay, let's go back to the our presentations. And we finished all the presentations but one, and that was the chairman's update, I think. Was it not? Let me see here. Let me get back to it here. Advanced air mobility. Oh, okay. Let's see. Where's it? Oh, where's that here? Losing track here. Oh, here it is. Yeah. Okay, so Chairman's, I have 3 things to report. Number 1, I want to welcome all the new members, which I've already done. But more importantly, I want to indicate all you should have received the 2024 member syllabus and reference. And if you haven't, please let Kathleen know and we will get it to you. That was also sent to existing members, and it is available on the Roundtable website as well under the SFO roundtable.org and then select Learning Resources. I might just note that Learning Resources section is constantly being updated, so we'll be making improvements to it during the course of the year. But I would refer you to that if you have any questions or comments on the basics, or you can ask Kathleen as well. Number 2, I want to bring your attention that the League of Cities is holding their spring Congressional City Conference in Washington, D.C., March 11th through the 13th. While we do not sponsor members to go to it, if any of you are going as part of the League of Cities representation, I would advise you there is a aviation roundtable policy discussion on the I think it's on March 11th, is it not? The 11th, on the 11th of that week. So I'd encourage you to attend that, and if so, please let us know what you hear. It's the, I think it's the first roundtable they've had in a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken, on aviation. But I did want to bring that to your attention. If you have any questions on it, please let Kathleen know and she can get you more details on it. But that's National League of Cities, March 11th through the 13th of Washington, D.C. And the third, UC Davis Aviation Noise and Emissions Symposium will be held on March 4th through the 6th, 2024 in Palm Springs this year. Nice location. Its stated purpose, for those of you who have not gone before, is to share groundbreaking efforts being undertaken by elected officials, airports, constituents, communities, in the FAA to mitigate noise and environmental aspects of aviation. This year's speakers include the highly regarded aviation attorney Peter Kirsch, as well as advice on community engagement from the Seattle Advisory Roundtable and the Portland Noise Advisory Community. I've attended this in the past, as I know many of you have, and I have found it to be very informative and helpful, particularly around what is new going on in the aviation, like AAMs. I think last year had at least 3 or 4 panels devoted to new technologies and what that might mean to communities. Typically, this is a live meeting, but they also offer it virtually. And we have attended and had members attend virtually in the past, and at least one, I think, attended live. We encourage virtual attendance, and we do have funds to accommodate or support a limited number of attendees if you have an interest. Preference will be given to the subcommittee chairs, and then first come, first serve. But if you haven't attended and you have an interest in some of these newer developments on aviation, particularly in community engagement, I'd encourage you to give some thought to it. And if you need more information on it, please let Kathleen know and she can give you more information on it. Okay? And one last thing, staff will send out an email tomorrow with more details to all of you. So you'll have something in hard copies so you can review and make a determination. And then let Kathleen know, because we will have to approve it before we authorize any expenditures based on the number of people attending. Okay, and last but not least, I did want to bring your attention that we do intend, as I said earlier, to have special presentations during our meetings on emerging technologies, particularly around AAM. We also intend to continue the process that Sam started last year, and I think Ricardo started the year before that, and trying to have more educational avenues open for those of you who want some tutorials on this. In the past, we've done it an hour before the meetings, and we'll probably continue that again, and hopefully that's enough time. I know we had 9 new members 2 years ago, and we have 5 or 6 new members this time, so that's a major challenge for us, because we have an awful lot of people just becoming acquainted with the terminology and the policies and the issues dealing with the roundtable. So we want to be cognizant of that and offer more information training programs for that. So just if you have any ideas for trainings that you might want, please let us know. We did have the Noise 101 symposium last year, and there's a presentation available, so if you haven't heard that, that's a great introduction to the roundtable and what we do or don't do and some of the metrics. But I'd encourage you to look at that. Okay, that's the only comments I had. Do you have any questions or comments with respect to anything I've said? If you have any ideas for future agenda topics, I would encourage you to let us know that too, because we are trying to make sure we're responsive to what you want to talk about and what you're hearing from your communities during the course of the year. Okay, with that, I think we've concluded the presentation aspects. We're going to open public comment on any of the presentations or the chairman's report. And then we'll take those comments. So, Ms. Gonzalez, could you please open up public comments?
Chair, we have 4.
4.
Via Zoom. Yes, we have Mary Jo, the first one, Remy Tan, Jennifer, Darlene Yapley.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We'll start with Mary Jo. And again, my apologies to the public over our technical difficulties this evening. I know it's been difficult for you all, and we do apologize, and hopefully we'll not have a repeat of it. With that, Mary Jo, please open up your line, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. So this is regarding the GBAS submission of OW2. It was hard to hear Bert's presentation
I'm sorry,
at times.
we're having difficulty hearing you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes, thank you.
Do you want for me to start again?
Yes, please. We'll
Okay.
reset the clock.
This is regarding the GBAS submission of OW2, and it was hard to hear Bert's presentation at times, so I'm not sure I caught everything. But my question is, now that SFO submitted OW2, is SFO planning to run some tests to measure the potential speed break impacts of OW2 at site-by, as requested by the City of Palo Alto, and before OW2 gets implemented? To clarify, these tests will not be full tests of an OW2 GBAS approach like the United Airlines tests that were done a couple of years ago. These tests would be simpler. The tests don't require to follow a GBAS approach. The test flights could be vectored by air traffic control for the portion of the flight path that would emulate the new conditions at waypoints 80 and side-by. So will SFO run some tests before implementation? Thank you.
Okay, and that was related to Bert's presentation. So Bert, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, sir, I'd be happy to. Ms. Fremont, if you could lower your hand, that way I know you can hear me. Ah, great. So wanted to respond to that. We are trying to get some of the airlines to help us out with this. We're working with Delta. Delta's having some issues, and we're also trying to see if we can get on with Boeing to do some testing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next hand raised, Ms. Gonzalez, was, oh, excuse me, just 1 minute here. Public comment on number 1. Does anybody want to respond to the public comment made? And your response should be relating to what was said. Are any comments from members of the okay, hearing none, we'll move to the next public comment.
We have Remy Tan.
Randy, was that the name? Remy, I'm sorry. Remy, if you could please open your line, and the floor is yours.
Hello, I wanted to comment on the AAM, and I think Christine Bowles, our representative from Pacifica, council member. I'm bringing up the quantities, and this is makes me think that there may be an issue of safety, and wondering if the SFO and the FAA studied. We have so many of these units. If they do crash, it's not going to be just a little toy drone flying, falling into a park or somebody's backyard. It's going to be, a pretty major event, like a light aircraft crashing into a house, for instance. So I'm very concerned about that. And then the second thing regarding the increase of the flights out of SFO, the international flights, we are getting flights probably every 2 to 3, maybe 5 minutes frequency between midnight and 2 a.m. Over North Pacifica area, which also affects South City and Daly City. And these are very loud flights, and they're the 777s, 747s, and a couple of 380s, and they fly pretty low. So I'm very concerned about that, and I understand the airport's also looking at an international terminal expansion, which is probably going to exacerbate that situation. So I hope that the SFO can actually work with Oakland Airport, because Oakland's runway, approach and departures over the bay, and maybe shift some of those late night flights, if not all of them, to the Oakland Airport, and then have a curfew on late night flights between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Remy. And you made it exactly with 1 second to spare, so well done. Does staff like to respond to that? Tim, did you want to respond to there were no questions, there was a comment made on safety?
Safety is, the regulators are looking at it like any other, and safety is a priority to enter. The FAA's charge is the safe operation of the airspace, so safety is the number one concern, is always what I've heard and been said, so that's it, so.
Thank you. And then, Doug, did you want to respond at all on the international flights? There was a comment made about a lot of collaboration with the Oakland Airport on that.
Maybe just to clarify that we are not planning any expansion of the international terminal. And then also one of the challenges is the decision to shift airline service is really up to the airlines. There's areas in the country that have jurisdiction over multiple airports, Washington, D.C., New York area, for example. The Aviation Authority can essentially drive policy that affects multiple airports. Here, each of the 3 Bay Area airports operate independently, so it would really be more of an airline economic decision that would drive that. But I agree that in the future, we're going to need to see some balancing of how air traffic exists at all 3 airports. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
The next public comment was Ms. Gonzalez.
The next one is Jennifer, Chair.
Jennifer, if you please state your name and your city, please, and open your mic, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Landesman, and I'm a resident of Palo Alto. I am speaking about the advanced air mobility. It's really important to keep in mind that both the nature and signature of the noise of these vehicles is very different from what we're used to. In particular, vibrations, which the FAA does not consider in their quote-unquote annoyance metrics. Vibrations are sounds more like fireworks, or if anybody's familiar with the shoreline noise, you cannot insulate against vibrations. And if you're concerned about health, you're going to want to have to look at this very closely. And I would be cautious about saying it's quieter, maybe quieter than a helicopter, but how close is that vehicle to you? That's another issue. And you should be careful about greenwashing this whole, endeavor and business plans. And greenwashing is when you understate potential harm. So I would be very careful about that. And I would also push back, this idea, it's like NextGen was also supposed to be quieter, et cetera, et cetera. And to find out about it after the fact is really not even the way it's supposed to work, because according to national environmental policy, you're supposed to know things beforehand. Something I heard is that some of the infrastructure projects may not be reviewed by the FAA unless they are on federal land. So I would look at all the regulations and the rules, what rights you have under NEPA, but it's really important to not say something is quieter when you don't even know which vehicle and which noise you're referring to. Thank you, and congratulations, Chair Royce.
Thank you very much. Tim, would you care to respond to any kind, there was a comment made, but any comments or response?
I think it was really just kind of more comments on what to consider as these aircraft enter in, so
Thank you. They're valid comments, and they are concerns I think we all have. And as we go through this over the next period of time, we'll note that as we try to raise the questions. Again, this gets back to how we can make sure we can have effective public involvement in the decisions made around AAMs. So thank you very much for your comments. Ms. Gonzalez, by the way, any other member comments on this? I apologize. I would note, just as a bit of information, that at the Davis Symposium, one of the speakers is Supervisor Chavez from Santa Clara County, who is going to speak on some of the environmental impacts of some of the local aircraft at one of their airports down in Santa Clara. And that may be of interest, because I know a number of you have expressed in the past concern not just on noise, but some of the particles and some of the other consequences from airplane travel, particularly regional airplanes. So that's one of her presentations. So with that, Ms. Gonzalez, could you please open up let me know who the next speaker is?
Chair, we have last one, Darlene Yapley.
Okay. Darlene, if you could please indicate your name and your town of residence, and the floor is yours.
Darlene Yapley from Palo Alto. And thank you, Chair Royce, for covering the A&E Symposium. I have less of a comment to make. In addition to Supervisor Chavez, we have 3 community speakers from the Bay Area. We have Mary Jo Fremont from Palo Alto, who will speak on community-centric representation of noise impacts. Tammy Mulcahy of Los Altos is going to talk on best practices and recommendations for fly quiet programs. And thank you very much to Bert, who spoke with both of us on SFO airports as one of our interviewees. And I will be speaking with Don Scotta of FAA on our joint noise policy review webinar that we held as an example of community engagement. There will also be an update from the FAA on noise policy, and Tim Middleton in the room there is on the planning committee. So I hope people can come and join. There's going to be a full day educational forum the day before. There's a 1.5 hour Q&A with Cindy Chavez and another lawyer, Steve Tabor, at the community meeting. So I think this will be worthwhile. And again, congratulations, Chair Royce.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Are there any comments or questions with respect to comments made by Ms. Yapley? Okay, seeing none. Are there other public comments, other hands raised?
There's no more public speaker.
Okay, great, thank you. With that, we'll close the public comment with respect to the presentation section. I did forget one item of the presentation, so we're going to go back to it. It should take just a minute, and that's subcommittee updates. And so the one committee that I know did meet since our last meeting was the TWG. So Chairman Hindi, if you'd like to present on that.
Certainly. Thank you, Chair Royce. The technical working group met on January 8th at 3:30 in Foster City. And in attendees was Chair Royce, and from Redwood City, member Kaya Aiken. And we had 2 items on the agenda, 2 presentations actually they were. One presentation, the first presentation was by the FAA, Joe Burt, the team manager of the Western Service Center. And his presentation covered the performance-based navigation and environmental processes. The second presentation was from SFO, Bert Ganong, aircraft noise office manager. And Bert's part of the meeting was a continuation of previous meeting where he could not finish his presentation due to time constraint. And he covered the flight procedures, flight tracks, and airport director report. Both of those presentation and the meeting is taped, and it is available on the SFO Roundtable website.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any comments or questions with respect to the TWG report? I might add that the presentation Bert gave on how to read the director's report, I think, was highly valuable. So if you want to get some input on exactly what that report's designed to tell you and how to read it, you can listen to the audio. And we may revisit that in a live presentation before one of our meetings in the future on a volunteer basis. So, but again, thank you, Bert, for that. And thank you, Mr. Hindi. The ground-based noise committee did not meet since our last meeting, so there's no report there. The legislative committee did not meet either, although I will give you a quick update on that, being the chair of that committee. The 2 topics I want to bring to your attention: FAA reauthorization, the work we spent last year on the letter with comments. It is still in limbo. It is being funded through a continuing resolution. The continuing resolution goes through March, and it's expected will be continued again. One of the big holdups on it is the point of contention is airline pilot training. There's a big dispute in Congress over how much training should be required for pilots. So that's one of the holdups. But it is being funded through continuing a resolution. So that's probably the key thing. And then secondly, I think I already alluded to the National League of Cities report and that policy work going on there. So those are the only 2 things that I think I'm reporting on. Kathleen, did I miss anything? No. Yeah. So with that, we'll close the reports from the subcommittees. We'll go back and open for public comment on the subcommittee reports. So if anybody in the public wishes to comment on either of those 2 reports, please raise your hand. Ms. Gonzalez, do we have any hands raised?
Don't have any public comment, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. We'll close the public comment on the subcommittee reports. Before we come to the end of the meeting, I am going to open it up for non-agenda items for public comment. We did not get to that at the beginning of the meeting, so we'll do it now. Are there any members of the public that wishes to comment on anything that's not on the agenda? So with that, Ms. Gonzalez, if you could please open up the public comment and see if any hands raised with respect to that.
We have two public comments.
Great. Thank you. If you could please identify them and open up the line for the first one, that'd be great.
The first one is Jennifer.
Okay, Jennifer, welcome back. Name and town again, please. Have you opened up her line?
Thank you. Jennifer Landesman from a resident of Palo Alto. At the last technical subcommittee meeting, there was a very good presentation by the FAA on national environmental policy. And I don't know if the whole committee or the whole roundtable is going to be made aware of this, but the net of it, or what I heard, is that, you know, the FAA uses a noise screening to decide on which level of review to do. And of the three levels, which categorical exemption or exclusion is basically no review really, an EA or an EIS, the FAA is using their screening to pretty much consider most everything acadics. And I just wanted to note that at actually the UC Davis Symposium, I asked the question, what's the difference in investments that are made in a CADEX, an EA, or an EIS, to an attorney that actually works with the attorney that is going to be a keynote speaker this year. And the answer was that, you know, a CADEX basically doesn't cost anything, very little. EA is hundreds of thousands of dollars, and an EIS is in the millions. So those concerned about putting investments, federal investments, into environmental issues, forego all of these, you know, potential investments just by the nature of the policy, which, you know, chooses with a very light screening that is not transparent. We're not aware how this screening works to make everything a CADEX. And therefore that eliminates, you know, having information for the public. I understand that you all internally have a lot of information for yourselves and impact a lot of the airspace design. However, the average person who's going to be affected by these actions is hardly ever told, and also because of the threshold criteria, but that's another story. I just wanted to mention the dollar investments. Thank you.
Thank you. Because it's a non-agenda item, we're prohibited from commenting on it, except to ask for clarification. Is there any questions from the committee for clarification? I see none. I would only note that I would again refer members of the committee to the audio of that of the TWG meeting, in which there was a discussion over the three levels of review done for environmental purposes. Okay, Ms. Gonzalez, is there I think, Lily, you said there's another public comment on non-agenda items?
We have Remy Tan.
Hey, welcome, Remy. If you could please name and town again, please, and then the floor is yours.
Hello, Remy Tan again, architect Pacifica. I just want to respond to the item on the, you know, the lack of coordination between the three airports, and I'm wondering, you know, urge the roundtable and maybe working with the other roundtables to see if we can get a coordination between all three airports to, you know, optimize the amount of, you know, runway use that we can have, you know, available for the late night flights. I don't know what it would take to get that done, but it seems like a good use of resources if we can do that, similar to New York and Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, Remy. Appreciate your comments. And again, we cannot comment on it because it's not an agendized item, but we appreciate you bringing it to our attention, and your concern will be noted. Any other public comments on non-agenda items?
There's no more public comments.
Okay, with that, we'll close the public comment for non-agenda items and get back to the regular agenda. I believe the only item left on the regular agenda is item number 12, member communications. This is an opportunity for members of this roundtable to share anything going on in their communities you thought might be of interest to the roundtable as a whole. Do we have any items that a member would like to bring to our attention? Okay, I see none. And with that, we're going to move to the final item on the agenda, which is adjournment. But before I do that, I do want to thank all the members who presented today and all the speakers. And again, I do want to, and to our staff in particular, putting these meetings together does take a significant amount of time, and we are very appreciative of it. And welcome to our new secretary, too, by the way. With that, I also want to, again, apologize for the awkwardness and the moving back and forth because of the technology difficulties. I know it was difficult for all of us and probably extend the meeting a little bit. But at that, if there's no further comments, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck on Sunday. I'm going to be pulling for you guys.
Thank you.
All right.